or I wasn't coping in a healthy way when I was a young journalist. Even in my 20s, late 20s, I really felt like the need to drink when I was a stressed day at work.
Take us back, like when did you first start drinking?
I definitely know that I was probably like 12, 13. I was like, okay, this makes sense to me now, I'm not just crazy, or I'm not just some wild child. Like I have, real trauma here that I can work through and figure this out.
Meet Leia Baez, a journalist and mother who hit rock bottom after addiction cost her marriage and nearly her child, and who now tells the story that changed her life forever.
So my daughter's in the back of my car, and I'm passed out on the living room floor in the house. And my daughter was left in the vehicle overnight, and I thought she was still at the babysitter. I don't even remember going to the babysitter to pick her up.
What's good, y'all? Before we get into today's episode, I got a quick favor to ask. If you could, please hit the subscribe button. The only reason that I'm asking is because by you subscribing, it helps for me to be able to continue to create this content. I don't have like a big team, or like I'm not getting paid by like some type of external source to create this content. Like I do it all on my own dollar. And so instead of doing fundraisers and asking, hey, donate $1, sign up for my Patreon, doing all of that stuff, all I ask is that you please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button too. Hit it right now, please. And just leave a comment, like leave something, because what that does is it shows the algorithm that this content is worth putting out there. That's the free thing that I ask for you, to just support the show and what we're creating here on the Clean Your Room show. So please subscribe, please like, and please leave a comment. And let's get into today's episode.
My name is Leia Baez, and I'm a South Omaha born and raised resident, still live there now. I'm so excited to be on this podcast, and I'm really passionate about storytelling. I was a journalist for more than 15 years for the Omaha World Herald newspaper. I also am the author of A Star for Stella, which is my memoir journey through sobriety and resilience, and really overcoming a version of myself I wasn't proud of. And so storytelling is kind of my thing. I also am a keynote speaker, and eventually will be traveling full time to do that. Right now, I'm also the communications director for Douglas County. So balancing it all, and just really honored to not only share my story and impact others, but help other women and other people just share their stories and feel confident in their own voice. So that's what I'm really passionate about, and I'm excited to dive in more with y'all.
Come on. Accolades behind the name, love it. But I think one of the things that people don't realize is, and you were mentioning that you love storytelling, people don't understand truly like the story that is behind most people's current position in life. And so today, I really want to dive into your story and how you have gotten to the place that you're in. You mentioned your memoir, and in your memoir, you talk a lot about it. And just for some context for you guys out there that's watching, first time that I saw her was at a conference. She was a speaker there, and I was listening to her story, and I'm like, God damn, like, this is powerful. This is powerful. And so today I want her to be able to just let you guys in a little bit into her life, and hear her talk about just what it took for her to be in the position that she's in, to be a keynote speaker, to have a memoir written, to be a director of communication, to doing all of these different things. And so take us back really to where even your interest for writing, because you were a journalist, your interest for writing started. Was it in childhood, or was this later on in life for you?
Yeah, so I loved journaling, and like I had little journals, diaries, the ones with the little locks, and I loved writing things and then locking it up as a kid, hoping my mom wouldn't read it. But I've always liked to journal, and when I was actually in high school, I had applied to be on the yearbook staff, because that's how we get all our friends in the yearbook. All our pictures are going to be in there if you have a friend on the inside. That's how it works. And so I wanted to be on the yearbook staff. Well, we had to write an essay about why we wanted to be on the staff. And the teacher who runs that class is also a journalism teacher. And she actually didn't select me. And I was really heartbroken. But what she did was she put me on the newspaper staff. And she says, you're a phenomenal writer. I want to see you do more writing for us on the newspaper staff instead of the yearbook. And so this pivot from someone else, someone else seeing the potential in me kind of led me down this path of, I loved interviewing people. I loved meeting new people and asking strangers questions. And so I was like, I love this. This is fun. I can actually make a career out of this. So shout out to Mrs. Beckstead at Bellevue West High School for that, pivot, because had I not been selected for the newspaper, staff, I would have never known really about journalism, I don't think. So that was the first point. And so I basically kind of dove headfirst into learning everything about news reporting. And there were programs available for Latinas in journalism. And so I was checking those out. So I already had known, like before I was out of high school, that journalism was going to be my major. And so that was kind of like the start for me. And then I was blessed to receive the Buffett Scholarship, and I attended UNO, and I continued my journalism path. So I majored in journalism, but then I worked for the Gateway staff and was a newspaper staffer at UNO's campus my entire college career.
Oh, nice.
And so just telling stories and getting to know people and allowing people to kind of have a voice. And I found what was really unique is people are a little hesitant at first when you ask them a couple questions, but it's really cool what happens when somebody opens up. It's like you connect on a deeper level with someone, and that's what I loved most, because I made a lot of great connections that way, and I made a lot of good friendships that way, So I just was super passionate about journalism. I always tell people that newspapers were my first love because I really felt like so passionate about it. So to see now like the demise of the newspaper industry, it really hurts my heart. But on the other side, I do love seeing so many people being vulnerable and sharing their stories and being willing to open up, because I think that's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you write your whole college career. Mm-hmm. From there, you land a job with the World Herald.
Yep. So I was actually still in college, and I landed a part-time job with the Omaha World Herald, actually writing like sports articles. So I was working weekends when I wasn't in school, and nights. I would take the high school football scores. They would call the newsroom, and I would take the score over the phone and put it into the computer. And was doing that. And I actually had a cousin who worked for the Omaha World Herald for many years before me. Her name was Cindy Gonzalez. And she still is a journalist here in our community. She works for the Nebraska Examiner. But seeing her do it too, I think was like also the reminder that I could do it, because there weren't a lot of people who looked like me in the newsroom. It was mostly white people. And for me, like having somebody else do it before you, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, okay, now I can do this. And so then I got my foot in the door at the World Herald. And then once I graduated college, they had a full-time job waiting for me. So it was a nice opportunity to, get that part-time money in college. But it was actually a door open for, post-college and my first actual journalism job.
Now, what was that experience like, transitioning from doing journalism in your college realm and just part-time at the World Herald to being fully engulfed in journalism culture?
Yeah, it was, I think the biggest transition point was just like understanding breaking news. Like when something happened, like we're out the door, you got to go get the information, and you're calling back to the newsroom, trying to let them know what's going on at the scene so that they can update the stories that we have, So it was like this really cool thing of one, teamwork, because you're working in this bigger group, and but also just everything was so fast. I mean, breaking news, because back then, this was also before social media really took off, but back then it was more like we wanted to be first. We wanted to be first to have the news and be the source for our community for breaking news. And so it was really important that we had the facts and we were accurate, but we had it first. And so that's the reason everything was probably so much faster and very fast paced. So I actually really liked that. I really liked the hustle of it, And I would also say that just knowing that you are responsible for putting out key information that affects our community, I felt like it was almost like this powerful, responsibility, right? So like I'm in control of getting out this very important information to people that it matters to, whether that's an accident, or if there was a bank robbery, or if there was something that's affecting like the shutdown of roads or our communities in danger of any kind, like you're in control of getting that information out. And so I kind of saw it as like, I have an important role here when it comes to public information, and being a resource to my community. So I really took that to heart, I think, and I was really passionate just about my job, even though journalism doesn't pay anything. Nobody gets into journalism for the money, I'll just say that. But it's because of you're a public servant, you're doing a service to your community, and I really held that near and dear to my heart.
Absolutely. When you look at, you've been on both sides of it. You've been somebody who has been behind the scenes when it came to breaking news, but then also too, just as a day-to-day person, you probably get all types of information now from social media, from news, all of these different things. What is something, just like as a civilian, let's say, that we wouldn't necessarily understand about, how do you say this? Pieces that civilians don't understand when it comes to journaling, or when it comes to journalists, and just like the grind, and even just like the type of not persona, but like just the culture of it. Like, what's something that isn't understood or maybe commonly misunderstood?
Yeah, so the thing that's coming up for me is, I think, so for example, let's say that there was a homicide that took place in our community. And what you might see on TV is the news story of the family who's devastated and is sharing their story about their loved one that is no longer here, okay? That's what we see. The public sees that piece. But what you don't see is the work behind that it took to get the family comfortable to talk in the first place. The journalist often has to go knock on the door and say, would you be willing to share anything about your loved one? I'm really sorry for your loss. I'm here and ready to talk whenever you are. There were a lot of times where I had to leave my business card and just say, I know this is a really hard time for your family, but I want to make sure that we tell the right story. So can you please, reach out to me when you're ready? And I don't think the public understands like how much work it really takes to get someone to open up and to go on camera even. And, now back then the World Herald, we kind of had an in, because we didn't have cameras in their faces like the local TV would. Mm-hmm. We had a pen and our tablet, right? Because that's how we captured news. But now it's different. It's very multimedia. People are also on their phones, using their phones. There's also, multimedia journalists capturing, footage on cameras as well. So it's a lot different. And I feel like we had an up because we also only had a pen and paper. We just wanted to talk to them. But I think that's the biggest thing, because a lot of people don't know how hard it is to get people comfortable talking to a journalist. So what you see on TV is the story and the family speaking, but there's a lot of legwork that goes behind that, to get them comfortable in the first place,
Is there a particular case that you went out to that really sticks with you, or really like impacted you in a way that you can't forget?
100%. Bonmar shooting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was a police reporter at the time, and I was actually working in the newsroom. And it was scary because, one, we initially thought it was a drill. We initially thought it was an active shooting scenario, and we didn't know it was serious. So that was a moment for me that I will never forget. And I just remember we were in the newsroom, and at the time the World Herald was downtown, and the newsroom, there were police scanners lined up kind of in the center of the newsroom. Then we had all these cubicles around the police scanners, and I was assigned to sit in one of those cubicles, taking in all the information that's coming off the police scanner. But then as we're getting calls in from the reporters who are on scene, we're trying to debunk, if you will, like what's real, what's not, because there was a lot of misinformation. There was a lot of stuff that was coming through that wasn't, certain. And it was just a very like when I talk about the hustle of this job, it was very fast. Like there was new information all the time. It was coming at us very, very quickly. And I just remember feeling so sad for all of the people that were there shopping. It was during the holidays, if you remember. And I just kept thinking, like, please, everybody be okay. And I just remember having this feeling in my gut, like it wasn't. And I'll never forget, one of our reporters called in the newsroom and said, this is real. This is real. We need more people here. And like my heart sunk. And then we started getting calls in of victims and how many victims we're hearing. And I was just crushed. And I, of course, like, you're numb, but I couldn't help but like tear up, That was a moment in my career where I was like, the work that we do is so important, but it's also like the first responders, like the people who are on scene. Like that moment hit me that the work that they do, is so important as well. And, just working, side by side with them as a journalist, I think is just such an important thing that we have in our community. But yeah, I'll never forget those moments. It was, I kind of get chills right now just thinking about it.
I could only imagine. And I would assume that they're, like, even with that moment in particular being a really big one, I'm sure there were like multiple handfuls of others where it's like, this shit is crazy that is happening and has an impact. I'm curious as to like, how do you as a journalist process these traumatic events? I know just myself being a therapist, like there's different things that I have to do to not take things home with me. But for you, like, were you able to like detach from that? Did you start to become desensitized to some of the stuff at times, or were there other ways that you would kind of handle like processing through those situations?
Well, unfortunately, this was during a time in my life when I was a pretty heavy drinker. So honestly, that's how I coped. I really felt like the need to drink when I was a stressed day at work or anything like that. I wasn't coping in a healthy way when I was a young journalist. Even in my 20s, late 20s, if I had a stressful day at work, I feel like I would want to drink, I think journalists are typically known for like meeting up for at happy hour after the newsroom day, But I honestly feel like that was my coping mechanism. And you know what? This is like the first time I really thought about that, because I still remember after, the day at the newsroom and not being able to sleep the day of the Von Mar shooting. And I just remember not being able to go to sleep. And I said, I need to have some wine, I need to decompress. And it just, obviously alcohol is a depressant. It makes it worse. And it did make me worse. I was crying. It was a long day. And I remember that very vividly, actually. But I never really thought about that until we started talking about this, actually. So right. That's interesting. So this is I'm kind of working through that, I guess. But
come on.
But, it's interesting to see how, alcohol really kept coming up for me in times like that in my life where I was stressed or it was a hard day. But generally speaking, I'd always loved to exercise and run. I've run a couple marathons, a lot of half marathons.
That sounds terrible, but congratulations.
Two full marathons. And I did a lot of running while I was a journalist because we had a running club. A bunch of reporters at the newsroom always ran together. And so I was actually a journalist when I ran my first half marathon, or my first full marathon, and I did it with another reporter from the World Herald. So I ran a lot. That was kind of my healthy way of decompressing. But the first thing that came up for me when you asked me was like, oh, dang, I did go home and drink that night, So there's good ways to cope and not so good ways to cope, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah. I want to dive more into just what that looked like as it played out. But before I do, take us back. Like, when did you first start drinking?
I think I was trying to like piece this together actually when I was writing my memoir, but I remember stealing my dad's alcohol out of, he had beer. I would steal my dad's beer cans probably when I was about 12 years old. And I'd run up the street to meet my friends. And I I'd be like, I got 3 beer cans. And, we would all take some drinks. And yeah, it was such a wild time. But I definitely know that I was probably like 12, 13. Mm-hmm.
Is your dad Latino?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Facts. I know that drinking is a big part of Latino culture.
Mm-hmm.
From 12 going on, when for you did it start to become just like normalized and almost like at times, and even in Black culture too, like I think in all cultures, but like when you look at it, when it comes to celebrations, when it comes to gatherings, when it comes to like how we spend quality time, it's like it's a prominent part. Mm-hmm. Whether it's drinking, whether it's, I don't know about your experience, but I know with mine, it's like passing a blunt, doing all these types of things, and these are things that I used to partake in, not so much anymore. But for you, when did that habit start to become normalized?
Yeah, I would say that
This video right here is your sign going into 2026 that it's time for you to book your therapy appointment. We're not pushing it off no more. We're not acting like everything is good. We're ready for real change, real improvement, and real abundance to come into our lives. And the first step is making sure you take care of this thing right here. And how you gonna do that? You're gonna click the link that's either down here or up here. You're gonna fill out the form, okay? You're gonna wait for us to give you a call, which it should happen in 24 to 48 hours. And you're gonna lock in with a therapist and start to gain that mental and emotional clarity that you've been looking for. So that every last blessing that you done prayed on and every last goal that you're hoping to start in 2026, it actually comes to fruition. Now, listen, this is not no guarantee that we are going to make everything happen for you. But what I can tell you is that if you got this, the likelihood of you achieving the things that you're telling yourself and all your homies and all your homegirls right now that you want to achieve, the likelihood, it just went up drastically. So let's take this step. Let's book our appointment. Let's get it locked in. And let's start 2026 strong at Bear Company Counseling. Let's get right. And I'll see you on the other side.
Yeah, I would say that when I was 15, I think that's the first time I got drunk. I remember that. And that was just a bunch of girls doing stupid shit. We were just young and dumb. But I got a fake ID when I was 17. So I was now able to go to the bars when I was 17. And I hung out, and I typically hung out with some of my older cousins, and I also hung out with I tend to hang out with older people in general. So I could go to the bars now, and on the flip side of this though, I was a very good student. I was very involved in school, and there was nothing where my parents would say, oh, we're concerned about you, because you're drinking too much. And I was a straight A student pretty much, a few B's here and there, but I was a pretty good student on honor roll all the time. So very successful on the surface, right? And there's no need to panic from the parents, but underneath all that, I was running wild on the weekends, Once I started drinking when I was 17, then I started to dabble into drugs. And so, first it was marijuana here and there. And then when I got older and I was actually in college, I started dabbling into cocaine, more of like a party drug, but I was drinking, 3-4 times a week, 5 times a week sometimes. I mean, every day in college there's a drinking special. We used to go to the Ice House on Tuesdays. We used to go on Wednesdays. I think it was Shark Club. I don't know. There were so many drinking nights, and I pretty much went to all of them. I just loved to be out and go dancing and drinking. But typically what would happen for me is I would start drinking and I couldn't shut it off. Like I didn't want to stop the party, And so for me, it was like, I think I'm just wired differently in that I can't have just a couple drinks, that just doesn't work for me. And I always tell people my happy hours turned into after hours. Like I would go all day, 12 hours of drinking. I mean, if I could, Yeah. And there were times where, some of the girls that I would hang out with, we would all kind of pretty much be the same. But there were times where I would get so drunk and I'd get sick, like vomit, and then I'd start drinking again. You know?
It's the rally.
It's like, what is and because we're at a party. It was like a UNO college frat party. We didn't care. We were like, we're having fun. Oh, I feel so much better now that I puked. Like, oh, let me keep drinking. Like, wait a minute. Like, who does that? You know, who does that? But I think also because it was all around me, you know, it was like the thing to do. I didn't know any different. And I feel like, you know, it was just so normalized in college especially. And so I would say my drinking really took off in college. But, you know, I mean, I had really been partying since I was 17.
Looking back and really thinking about where you were at when you were 17 years old, you mentioned having a daughter of your own, and I'm assuming close to the age that you're talking about right now. What were the things that were going on, if any, that, all right, I'm gonna use this word, and if it's not accurate, say, nah, bro, like, get that shit out of here. What were the things that you were trying to avoid at that time that had you seeking out those things as opposed to other things?
Mm-hmm. So what and I didn't learn this until much later in my life. And in fact, I was going through a divorce, and I was seeing a therapist, and I had this trauma come up for me that I was unfamiliar with because I had compartmentalized it for so many years. But what had happened was my daughter was about 5 years old at the time when I was going through my divorce and the time I was seeing my therapist. And at the same time, I was having these like nightmares of like someone hurting her or like molesting her or touching her inappropriately or doing something to her. And I didn't know why these were coming up for me. And so I was talking to my therapist and working through some, you know, kind of like some negative feelings that I had with my therapist. And I had realized that that I was sexually molested when I was a child. And so it was wild because it came back to me when I saw it in my daughter. Like I saw my daughter, and then I just had these visions of something hurtful around her. And I was just like, why does this feel like this? And I remembered, you know, that happened to me when I was about 5. And I didn't tell my parents until I was 15. And at that time, the person who had did this to me was already dead. So there was like no legal action. There's nothing that we could do, you know. But the crazy thing about that is I had kind of been coping and like dealing with like being, I don't want to say a rebel, but like being a little bit rebellious, you know, through my childhood, you know, after that. You know, I was a really good student. I always was a really good student, but my personal life, my social life was always wild, you know. And hanging out with the wrong crowds, and I was hanging out with gang members, and I was doing things that I probably shouldn't have been doing. But it was just like this, I don't know, like I wanted to rebel. I wanted to break out of the norm, I guess. And later in, you know, like when I was in my late 30s, I realized, you know, that was, you know, that trauma from when I was a child was just built up in me, and I had never been to therapy, you know. My parents have never been to therapy. Nobody told me, okay, well, this happened to you. Let's go get help now. It was just like, okay, are you okay? You know, and it was just like, okay, you know, give me a hug, you know. But I mean, keep it pushing. And that's also kind of ingrained in, you know, our Latino culture as well. It's like, you got to be strong and keep fighting and, you know, be a warrior. And that's tiring sometimes, you know, you got to talk to somebody. And so, you know, I'm so grateful for my therapist because I wouldn't have identified that until, you know, I don't think ever had I not had that conversation, you know, with him. And then also for that to come up the way it did, because my daughter was the same age that it happened to me. And it was just a weird reflection moment that I had. But I also just like didn't feel guilty anymore for all the bad decisions that I made. Like I was like, okay, this makes sense to me now, you know? I'm not just crazy, or I'm not just some wild child. Like I have, you know, real trauma here that I can work through and figure this out. And so, yeah, so, I would just say that was the moment, I believe, that kind of took me down this path of just being rebellious and wanting to party all the time.
When you look at your rebellious behavior, what did the act of rebelling say about you in terms of kind of like pushing out or like defending against this traumatic experience or those traumatic thoughts that might have been trying to come in?
I think it was telling me that I can do what I want and I can be in control and I can be who I want to be, and this situation or this, circumstance isn't going to define who I am. So of course I wanted to like be rough and go, hang out with, like I said, gang members and run the streets and do drugs and drink and party. I was still, I would say, focused on what I felt mattered, but man, I love to party. I just wanted to party with my friends and, and be rebellious. But I think it was that control piece. Like I maybe didn't feel like I could be in control in that situation, but I can control who I am now. And I'm saying F off to whoever did this to me, and I'm gonna live my life and I'm gonna be bad. And that was my thinking of it, I think, as a kid. But, in hindsight, I really wasn't that bad. I just, like I said, like to get blackout drunk and dabble in some drugs. And so that's probably a lot for kids these days, because I think our kids are wired differently and the way they've grown up and social media and technology. I don't have that same fear around my daughter. She is amazing, and I have to tell a funny story quickly because this brought up something for me recently. So she recently went to a homecoming dance at Creighton Prep, and she called me or texted me and said, "Can I go to an after party?" And I was like, wait a minute.
What happens
I'm
at after parties.
Exactly. Like, wait, what kind of after party are we talking about? Because the kind of after parties I went to, there were keg stands. We were making out in bathrooms. Like, what are we doing here? Like, what? I was like, and she was like, "No, Mom, it's just at my friend." I was like, I said, "Where's it at? Who's going?" She's like, "It's just at my friend's house. You can pick me up in an hour or two." And I was like, "Okay, fine." So I pick her up, and it was everything was fine. There was a bunch of kids there, and she comes out, and I was like, "How was it?" And I did tell her before I let her go, I said, "No drugs, no alcohol." She's like, "Duh, Mom." But I had to say that, because that was my after party. It's not her story, but it was definitely mine. But so when I picked her up, I said, "So how was it? What'd you guys do?" She's like, "Mom, we drank Gatorade Zero and ate Sour Patch Kids." I was like, okay, that's much better. I said, I like that kind of after party. So, it's just, I'm very grateful that she's got a good head on her shoulders. But I always tell her, look, I made the mistakes, so you don't have to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to fast forward back into journalism at the World Herald. During this time, you met your soon-to-be husband?
Yes, during my time at the World Herald, I met my daughter's father and my husband at the time.
Can you talk a little bit about that? How'd you guys meet, especially during all this hustle and bustle?
So actually, my dad and his dad were really good friends growing up, and so we just actually ran into each other at a graduation party, and just started talking, and then just kind of started hanging out. So it was pretty, chill. Like I felt comfortable. We were both, our families knew each other, it was one of those kinds of things. So that was pretty much it. Facts.
And then you have your daughter.
Yep. My daughter, and she's 14, and she is like the best thing that's ever happened to me. She's the reason that I'm sober now. She's the reason that I do what I do. And just kind of continue to be ambitious, She has a really great eye for design, like graphic design. So I always, when I work on a project or something, I'm always like, "Can you look at this and tell me what you think?" So I love that she can, give that feedback to me. And she's just a really good kid. And she recently took speech and debate at her high school, and she got second place on a speech.
Oh,
So
nice.
and that was all on her. Like, I didn't tell her you should do this because this is what mom does. Like, she wanted to do that. So I loved that about that she's ambitious and wants to try new things. And so that's really cool.
I feel that. Where did the relationship between you and your now ex-husband start to deteriorate and decline? And what were some of the things at play that led to that?
Yeah, I would say we always had a lot of fun together, and but I would say, a part of that was my drinking. Like if we got in an argument or something, I'd want to go drink, or if I wanted, I would want to hang out with my friends and not him if, we had a fight. And I just think that us together drinking, or us, it just didn't mesh well at all, so that was part of it.
What do you mean by that, though? You together drinking?
Like,
was there a lot of fights?
Yeah, like just arguing, or like, just, it ended up being, turned into something it shouldn't, being upset with each other, or, like I said, alcohol made me sad sometimes it made me mad. I never knew, like, it just made me a different person. And so there were a lot of times where we would argue and stuff because if I'm drinking too much. So that, I think, and then also like our just different demeanors and behaviors while drinking, so that was, I think, the biggest thing. But the real reason that, our relationship failed was, he filed for divorce because of my alcoholism. So I had been, we had been on the outs as it is, and then I had put my daughter in danger in a situation where she could have really gotten hurt because I was drunk. And I don't even remember that. And I honestly, I believe that I got, like roofied at a bar, but I don't know that, but still the point is, like, I take responsibility for my drinking, and that's the reason why he filed for divorce. He wanted to end the marriage, and then he filed for full custody of my daughter. He was trying to take my daughter from me. So that was also very eye-opening for me because that's the only thing I wanted to be, was a mother, And so now to realize how my behaviors and the choices that I've made are impacting me in that way really hurt me, because I didn't want to end up here. I didn't anticipate my life to look like this. I wanted the house and the marriage and the kids and the job, like we all do. And it just wasn't that way. And so it wasn't until, I realized through my therapist and a lot of sessions in therapy that, I was a contributor to a lot of the, failures and mistakes in my life simply because, of drinking. And so I had to really just do a lot of inner work and realize what I really want for my life. And it's taken me a long time because I tried to quit drinking a lot. I did. And it wasn't easy. It's not easy. There's so many temptations around us. You can't even walk into Nebraska Furniture Mart and not see a bar. Okay. You can't even go shopping for furniture. And then, it's everywhere. And so I had to have a spiritual awakening really for me to get sober. But I would say definitely the relationship failing, and I don't take all the responsibility because I believe he had his own faults as well, but together we weren't a match.
Yeah.
And so and I definitely think that my alcoholism contributed to a lot of that.
I want to sit in this space for a little bit. What was the situation that you put your daughter at risk? Like, what exactly was that, or what happened?
So I was, and this is actually in my book. So this is a first chapter of A Star for Stella. But I had gone out. I was getting ready to go on a work trip, and I had gone to meet a couple friends to attend a going away party. And sorry, I keep hitting the mic.
You're good.
I was going to attend a going away party for one of my friends. And I had all the intention. I was like, I'm only going to have a couple drinks because I have to drive and I have to go pick up Estella from the babysitter. Excuse me. And so that was my intention. My intention was just to have a couple drinks and then come home. So we went to eat. We started by eating pizza at Pitch, and I had a drink there and then or two there, and then we went to this apartment complex there was a party there where my friend was having a going away party. And I didn't know a lot of people. I knew some, but I was there for her. And I was with my friend. And so we walk in and, we're having some drinks. And I was drinking Blue Moon. I remember that bottle of Blue Moon beer. And, we're taking pictures and she's getting ready to move to California. So we're all hugging her and just taking pictures. And then I go to the bathroom and come back to my drink and just keep drinking it. And then she's like, don't leave yet. So then I had another beer and we're still hanging out. And then my friend Patrick, he was like, we got to go. And I was like, okay. So I'm leaving and I'm going, to the babysitter to pick up my daughter. So I get in my car and everything and go pick her up. No problem. And then I pick her up from the babysitters. And from that point on, I don't remember anything. And so my daughter's in the back of my car. And I'm passed out on the living room floor in the house. And so, or the couch or the floor. I don't know if it's the couch or the floor. I can't remember, sorry. But anyway, so my daughter was left in the vehicle overnight. And I thought she was still at the babysitter. I don't even remember going to the babysitter to pick her up. So from the time I left the bar or to the apartment complex to where the party was to pick up my daughter, and I only lived a block away from the babysitter. I don't know what happened. But I got home, I got in the house, and my daughter was in the car. And it was the summer. It was July.
Oh, dang.
And thank God she was okay. But how freaking scary, right? I mean, that was like the most devastating moment of my life because I don't know what happened to me, I only had a couple drinks the whole night and we had eaten and knowing who I am and how much I could drink.
Didn't add up.
It just didn't add up. And I was just like, I don't know what happened to me. I was scared. I didn't know if I should go to the hospital. I didn't know what to do. I was scared about so many things, like, am I going to go to jail? Am I going to go, should I go to the hospital? Because who knows if I had like an episode of some sort, a health episode, medical episode. So it was just a really scary situation for me. And it was, and I said before, like I was leaving on a work trip the next day. I had a contract to fill out for an event that I was working in California. And so, me and my ex-husband are arguing at the time about it, and he didn't think I should go, and I knew that I had to go because I had this contract, And so while I was gone, he filed for divorce, and then then it was just a year and a half almost long custody battle and fight and pure hell. But
before we get there,
yep,
because I want to get there. What was that next morning conversation like? Or how did you even come to and figure out, like, where's my daughter? Like, give us a
I actually called the babysitter because I called the babysitter to tell her I'm coming to pick her up. She's like, you picked her up last night. What are you talking about? So I'm like, what? And then I'm screaming I'm looking all over the house. I'm screaming for my daughter. I'm looking outside, I'm doing all this. And yeah.
And your husband at the time was there as well?
He wasn't home at the time,
okay.
No. So he wasn't home at the time. But yeah, so I was looking all over the place for her and I couldn't find her.
How did he end up in this situation, finding out about like what happened?
I think I told him. I had, after I brought Stella in and gave her a bath and, got her settled, I had told him what happened because I was visibly upset. I was bawling, it was very obvious that something was wrong. And so when he asked me what was wrong, I told him. And then he, just proceeded not to believe me and just said I was a drunk and, things like that. And so, of course, it just turned into a big fight. And so I left and he had my daughter, and I went to my parents' house to go talk to my parents because I knew I needed some support, to figure out what I should do.
And this opened up to now a 1.5 year long battle with your ex-husband. Take us through that whole process and that journey.
That was the worst time of my life. I mean, even just reading the affidavits from these people, like attacking my character and trying to say like I'm such a bad person. And I mean, I agree. Like I was making very bad choices in my life and I was an alcoholic. But there's a lot more to me that didn't get painted, in front of the court. And so that hurt me, obviously that hurts you. And anytime your character gets attacked. But it was just also, I mean, I know this now. I didn't know that then. It was just building me up for what was next for me and where I needed to go. I had to go through all that, But that was the hardest time of my life. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat hardly. I was depressed. The crazy part about it, though, is I couldn't stop drinking. I was still drinking. Even after that, I was still drinking. Like I wasn't drinking with my daughter because I could only see her certain days now because I had he had temporary custody, so I don't, go visit her a couple times. But I think I just didn't know how to cope. I didn't know how to handle all this pressure from the outside. And how have I been coping my whole life? With alcohol, my whole life. That's all I've known is to feel better, for a short period of time. To numb your feelings was to drink alcohol. And so I was living at my parents' house because I had moved out of his house. I moved in with my parents, and on the days that I didn't have visitation with Stella, my daughter, I would drink. And I was actually, the crazy thing about it is I knew that I had to do something during that time to make me feel better because I was, like I said, depressed. I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. And for the longest, my whole life, the one thing that I've known that's always empowered me is education. And so while I was working as a journalist at the World Herald, I knew that I had to go back to school because I wasn't going to probably be able to afford being a single mom on a journalism salary. There's just a lot of expenses I was accruing now, all these attorney fees. It was just crazy. And I said, for the longest time, I want to go back to get my master's degree. And so I decided, during the divorce, during the custody battle, while I was living at my parents', I had the time now. So I decided to pursue my master's degree at Bellevue University where you could do it online. So I was working full time still. I was going through a divorce. I was going through a custody battle. I was seeing Stella every few days, temporary visitation. My parents had to be there. That was the rule. And then I was going to school at night and, doing my work on the weekends so that I could get my master's degree because I had this vision that when I get custody of my daughter, we're going to get our own house. We're going to have everything. Everything's going to get better for me. But I knew that I had to do something in that moment to empower me because I was a hot mess, And I think about that. I think about that time in my life, and it was just so pivotal for me because it was I had nothing. There was nothing else I could do but pray. I was down on my knees praying to God that I need help. I don't know how to do it, but I don't want to be this person, anymore. I want to be better for my daughter. I want to be a good person. I want to be a provider, a role model for my daughter. And I know I can't be that person if I'm still drinking. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know how I was going to quit. I knew I wanted to, I just didn't know how, So fast forward a little bit, and I don't know if you want me to dive into this now or wait, but I really just had a spiritual awakening. I had a family member pass away from cancer, but it was very possible he could have survived the cancer if his liver could have handled the chemo. But he didn't survive, and he was a very close uncle of mine who was like a second dad to me. And he was very young. And I just had these moments of reflection, like, I'm in my 30s and he was in his 50s. Does that mean I only have 20 more years to live if I keep drinking like this, you know? And it was crazy because I had to have a surgery, and so I was actually under anesthesia when this happened. And I write about this in my book as well, but my uncle, after he passed away, came to me in my dream. And he grabbed me, and he had this really loud, boisterous laugh. Like, he was so loud, you know. And he grabbed me on the shoulder, and he looked at me, and he just told me, you don't have to drink. And it was just like this moment of like, oh, like, I don't have to do it just because it's all around me. Everybody else does it. Like, that's what all my friends do, you know, a lot of my family. Oh, I guess I don't have to do that, you know? And it was just like this moment of like an aha moment, like, but it's so silly because it's like, well, duh, you don't have to drink. But I guess from hearing it from him, you know, and knowing that he could have also still been alive had he made that choice for himself. So I come back I come back to the recovery room after that surgery when I had this dream under anesthesia. This is such a crazy experience, and I come back, and my boyfriend, my now boyfriend, is in the waiting room waiting for me. And this is in 2019 that I had this surgery and this awakening. But he's waiting for me, and I said, I'm done drinking. I'm not drinking anymore. And he looked at me, and he's just like, you're still probably high from the from the anesthesia.
He said, you talking shit.
he's like, you're lying. He's like, whatever. But I haven't drank since. Okay. So I've been sober since November 7th of 2019.
Come on.
And it's been the best thing that I could ever do for myself, for my daughter, for my career, I just feel like God heard me when I got on my knees and said, please help me. Oh, I'm going to get emotional. You know, sometimes that's all we can do is get on our knees and pray, you know? And I truly, I'm so sorry.
No.
I truly believe like my whole experience was led by God. And I hate to say that like God needed me to go through all that to get to where I am, because I don't think God really wants anybody to go through the really hard stuff, because it was a really hard time for me. But man, I did need all that, you know? I did need all that to really like just bask in my success and just to feel the support around me and the people who love me. And my partner now, his name is Brian. We are like a team, and he's so supportive of my sobriety. I haven't really ever had any doubt in my mind that I can't do anything, because he's just such a supportive partner. I've never had that. You know, I've never had a person in my life who believes in me and wants me to chase my dreams. So I just felt like all these things happened to my life so that I could get to this point where I'm at. But it was rough. It was really rough. And, you know, I'm really grateful to be, you know, just sober and happy. There's tough times, obviously. Sobriety does not fix everything, and I want to make that clear. But what it does do is it allows you to go deeper inside and figure out, why am I the way I am? You know, why do I make the choices I make? Why do I do the things that I do? You know, it's just kind of fulfilling to know that it's okay to be yourself with all this other stuff that happened. You know, all these mistakes, all these failures. It's so powerful to know that it's okay to take those lived experiences, good and bad, and use them to propel you to the next level, you know? And I think that's what this has done for me. And yeah, I give all credit to God and my faith and my family. Yeah, my family's been my support system as well. And I'm just really grateful to be in the place that I am now.
I feel that. One of the things that you mentioned with the vision that you had from your uncle was, he died because his liver couldn't
process the chemotherapy.
Can you talk a little bit, and I know you're not a scientist or anything like that, but talk a little bit about just like the correlation that you made there with drinking and the liver and how it could impact you and how it impacts other people. Because there might be some people out there. I remember being young and like, I would just turn the fuck up. Like, let's just be honest. Like, we was drinking SoCo, we drinking UV Blue, we drinking Parmesan, E&J. We drinking it straight. 1800, like just drinking it and like fish and water, you know what I'm saying? And not really understanding the impact, because I remember back then it was like a hangover lasted a quick second and then it's like right back. But since I'm good on the outside, I'm not understanding what's going on the inside. So talk a little bit about that.
I love that you say that, because that's what it is. It's like we have no idea the damage that we're doing to our insides. You know what I mean? Because we don't see it. You know, imagine if we had our organs out here carrying them out on the outside and we could see how bad they look.
I'm fucked.
We would make better choices, right? But it's like out of sight, out of mind. We don't know what we don't know. And so it's really, for me, I saw how sick he was. And I knew that, you know, he didn't want to die like that. He didn't want to live his life, you know, like that. And he was so young, 59. And I think that for me, knowing that if he was healthier, in a healthier state, he could have, you know, processed the chemotherapy and he'd probably still be alive. And it just made me reflect on myself, because I started to think, well, I used to drink with him all the time, and you know what I mean? And he was my drinking buddy at times. And shit, if I'm in my 30s and he's in his 50s and I only got 20 more years to live at this pace, right? If I'm drinking like this, is that what I want for my life? You know? And I said, I don't want that for my life. You know, I want to be healthy. I want to be here for my daughter. I want to, you know, see my daughter get married and live her beautiful life. And I want all that. But at this rate right now, like the rate I'm going, like, who's to say, like, I'll be alive in 10 years or not, you know? And I think it was just knowing that his liver wasn't healthy enough, you know, knowing that he wasn't in the best health, but on the outside, he looked fine, you know? And that scared me, because I said, well, the reason I was having surgery in the first place that day where I had this awakening was because I had a fibroid tumor about the size of a cantaloupe, and I had to have a hysterectomy.
Oh, dang.
And so I'm like, my thoughts were too, like, why the hell do I have a tumor growing in me? You know, where is that coming from? And they don't know. They don't know how they grow or what, you know, they don't know what caused them. But I'm like, what am I doing right now in my life that isn't good for my health? Hands down, drinking, you know, drinking 3 or 4 times a week to the point of drunk. And it's all fun and games until you start realizing the impact it has, you know, on your health, like literally on your organs and the way your body processes everything, you know? And so for me, it was just that, like seeing him, you know, in the hospital, sick, and then knowing like I was right there with them, doing the same things, you know? And, you know, I just didn't want that for my life. And so, you know, he and my, you know, I believe he's also like a big part of this journey for me, like a guardian angel, because the way he came to me in my dream, he was like surrounded by this white light, you know, and he was just, and I believe in I'm very spiritual, and I believe that was a connection with, you know, him. And like he knew I didn't want to drink anymore and was like, look, you don't have to drink, you know. And it's just crazy how that has stuck with me all these years and continues to push me to, you know, stay sober. And I don't even really think about drinking anymore, you know. I mean, people still drink around me. It doesn't bother me, but it's just not what I want for my life, you know, because I've been there.
I found that many people have a similar experience to you, but are unable to stop. And I I believe one of the pivotal parts that you've explained in your story so far, up to that point, was you identified that you no longer wanted that for your life. So you had this other objective goal, let's call it, that you started working towards. And when you look at many other people, like, they know that their behaviors or their choices or their actions is fucking their life up, it's fucking their body up, but there's no objective goal that they're working toward. And so it's like, what's the point in changing? Like, what am I doing? And in that moment, it sounds like you really identified with the culmination of all these other events, like your daughter being at risk, divorce, your uncle passing and having cancer and not being able to take this cancer, like take the chemo treatment. It was like, I see my future playing out in a different way, but I know that it can't if I don't take some steps now. Can you walk us through the journey of putting one foot in front of the other? Because I think hearing 7 years almost of sobriety is like, okay, yeah, I can do that. But the reality of it is that shit is not easy. And it's like, especially in the beginning, every day is like going from living one way, going from thinking one way, going from just being used to certain patterns and behaviors to all of a sudden now having to shift that, even though there's a goal there. Shit is hard.
So hard.
So what was it like for
Yeah.
you?
So hard. So, in the beginning, I doubted myself. I had a lot of doubt, and I didn't believe that I could do it. And so I stayed focused on my daughter. And so eventually I got joint custody back of my daughter. She was able to live with me now, and, there was no visitation rules, and I was able to get my mom job back, okay? So I got the mom job back, and, I'm living my life, and I just kept looking at her, and I just wanted to do it for her. She was my reason, and she has been my reason for so many things. But it was so hard because everything around me started changing dramatically. The friends that were my friends were no longer my friends. Well, I shouldn't say they weren't my friends, but they don't call me to come kick it no more. Because Leah's not drinking no more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So she's not paying that bar tab at the end of the night.
Was that hard? Was that?
That was probably the hardest thing. But I will tell you something. So my mom is like my best friend, and I often say she's my free therapist. But she said something so good to me. Because at this time I was speaking. So I was the commencement speaker at Bellevue University. I had finished my master's program, and I was selected to be a commencement speaker. That took off. That went viral. I got 6.5 million people, 6.5 million people watched that speech, and it went crazy. But that opened up so many doors for me. Organizations, nonprofits calling me saying, "Can you come speak? Can you come speak?" And I'm like, absolutely, yes, yes, yes. Of course I wanted to, right? So my mom made something, she made such a good point, and I love this because I carry it with me all the time. She says, you might not be invited by those friends anymore, but look at the stages you're invited on now. And that hit me because I was seeing it as a bad thing, right? Like, man, my friends don't call me no more to come to happy hour, and I can be the DD. Like, why wouldn't they call me? Like, that was hurtful for me. But my mom, she really made that clear for me that, God's plan for you is bigger than your happy hour nights and going to kick it with your friends. Like, you got to see this bigger picture. And so once I started to really just hold on to that thought, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to be invited to certain events anymore, and people aren't going to include me. And that was a big thing, feeling included, right? Mm-hmm. When you don't feel included anymore, people aren't going to do that. But what I am seeing now is I am seeing stages of hundreds of strangers I get to pour into, people I'm speaking at, keynotes here and there and getting paid to do it. I would have never in a million years thought that where I was in 2015, the moment that my daughter was left in the car, could turn into something so powerful and magical for a greater good. So much pain into so much purpose. And so I have to say, like, I was hurt, losing the friends, that's hard. But there's also, like, just your habits. Like, it's really weird how, like, your habits, like, when you come home from work and then maybe you, like, pop a bottle to have a drink, it's like, oh, shit, I used to do this all the time. Like, now what do I do? So it's like rewiring your brain almost, because now you can't just go home and drink because you're not drinking anymore. You got to find some new avenue of, what's your new habit going to be? So it was a lot of rewiring my brain. And so I really leaned into my fitness and exercise. And I love CrossFit and I love weightlifting. And so I would make this new like habit of, instead of like going straight home from work, I would go to the gym. And so there's these new things in my life that are healthy for me, that are benefiting me, that I'm, kind of just pivoting and doing. But you have to be very strategic, because it's easy to fall back into old ways, And I'll give you an example. A lot of times I would feel triggered to drink, or, feel like a pressure to give in, were around moments of, distress, or like moments of feeling not good enough. And I'll give you an example. So I was just newly sober. It was November of 2019. That's when I got sober. But in December, it was Christmas, December 2019. And I was super stressed because this is a holiday that I didn't have my daughter. And so that was hard, right? Because I always hated the holidays when my daughter was gone, because it was just a reminder to me that I messed up, that I'd made these mistakes, that failure, is just like this icky energy, right? Mm-hmm. And so I just had this feeling like I am not good enough. Like, why am I sober? She's with her dad. Who cares? Let me just freaking drink. Who cares? Because I'm by myself. It's Christmas Day. Well, my boyfriend Brian calls me, and I was like in tears, and I told him, I said, I'm going to the bar. I just need to like de-stress. I'm so upset. I just hate the holidays. And he's like, just wait for me. I'm on my way. And so I wait for him, and I think we're going to the bar. And he pulls up and he brings me these NA, and I never had an NA beer in my life, but he brought me a Heineken 0.0. And he's like, just have one of these. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, I don't want that. I want the real deal. But I'm telling you, it was so weird. It was just like the idea of the bottle to the mouth, that habit, that feeling. Mm-hmm. And I just needed one, and I didn't even need a drink. I didn't even want alcohol. It was just the trigger. I was triggered by the holidays. And then I had this feeling of like, I want to, do something that I've been wired my whole life to do, because that's how I deal with those emotions, And so instead of doing that, I just had one NA beer, and I was fine, and we watched a movie, and we had a great night. And I always tell that story because in those moments where you feel like you're breaking, there's always somebody who can come lift you up and to kind of re-guide you. And so I always tell people, lean on your people who you love and support you, because like in that moment, if I didn't have Brian and, him to steer me straight, I might have fallen off the wagon, mm-hmm. and went and drank that day. But that was probably one of the best moments of my life. And I don't even need an NA beer, but I'll occasionally have one, just to have one around, like if I'm visiting with family and they have one, and I say, do you want an NA beer? Sure, I'll have one. But I'll tell you what, NA beers still give you make you bloated and make you feel like crap.
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
Because you don't get the other side of it
either. Yeah, it's what's the point here? Just give me a Diet Dr. Pepper. I'm good.
Facts.
Yeah.
What's one of the relationships that you lost that you took the hardest? Or one where you were like, I thought this person was really for me, or I thought this is somebody who I was tight with, and now I have to grieve this loss, because the words that your mom said, sometimes people don't get that message as mm-hmm. As directly, and sometimes they're the indirect messages of just like, man, it's almost like a butterfly in a cocoon. You know what I'm saying? Like the butterfly or the caterpillar in the cocoon, it doesn't know it's a butterfly until after it pops out and it's going through all these changes and nobody see it. You just see this ugly looking thing, which is really actually beautiful. But yeah, what were some of the one of the relationships that you really took the hardest that you lost?
Well, I will say I didn't really lose them completely. Like some of these, like the people that I was really close with at the time, I'm still in touch with, and I see them, and it'll be like nothing ever changed, you know. But I will say, I'm not going to say any names.
No names.
But you know, it was a woman, and we were really close, and we did everything together. She was like one of my closest friends, and I think she felt like she was going to peer pressure me, or if she was around, she would be triggering to me. That's why she kept her distance. Mm-hmm. And I know that in my sobriety, I'm very strong-willed and I'm very determined, you know, to stay sober. But I just felt like our relationship, I thought our friendship was stronger than that, you know, but I also know that she felt a certain way about coming around me because she didn't want to impede on my sobriety, if that makes sense.
That's almost like a great friend.
Yeah. And so it's kind of a weird situation because we still talk and we're on social media and we text each other here and there and we see each other every once in a while. But like she'll have parties and stuff and I don't get invited, and you know, and that's okay. And I'm okay with that. And I know it's not coming up from a place of hurt for her. You know, she's not trying to hurt me. She's probably trying to protect me, you know, because she doesn't want me to come around some of the stuff they're doing where they're drinking, you know, they may be smoking marijuana, you know, so and I appreciate that, you know. Mm-hmm. So that's okay. I'm okay with that. But I think it still stings a little bit because social media, you can see what your friends are doing.
Yeah,
you know, when the parties are happening, you know what I mean? And I'm like, dang, I'm still not getting invited. I'm 6 years sober and, you know, I still don't get invited to those, to come just hang out with people, but that's okay. I just go back to that, you know, saying my mom, you know, she shared, and I'm not getting invited to some of the same places I used to go to, but getting invited to stages and to pour into people on a whole new level. So I just lean into that, and, you know, I try not to take anything personal. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
One of the 4 Agreements. I don't know if you've ever read that book by Don Miguel Ruiz, but amazing book. But that's something I also had to lean into because I was taking so many things personal when it had nothing to do with me, you know? And so many times I would carry that and then like have anxiety and like feel bad. And it's like, this has nothing to do with me, you know? So trying to remember that as well, and just come back to knowing that I'm doing what's best for me and what's best for my daughter. And at the end of the day, to me, that's what matters most.
Absolutely. When did therapy start coming into play? And what was your experience like? What were some of the downloads that you got, the things that you were able to really just like unpack and learn about yourself and ultimately be able to aid in the transformation into who you are today?
Well, I started therapy with marriage counseling. So when we were going through some hard times, we went through some marriage counseling, and that was rough. My ex even walked out of therapy once. It was pretty rough.
Oh, dang.
But so that is when I got...
Wait. All right. I don't want to get messy, but you can't just glaze over like you walked out. Can you talk about that session and what happened?
Well, what I remember is just that, you know, it was a typical for us. Like we were very like, we butt heads a lot. He said, she said, you know, and we didn't always align on our messaging. And so he didn't like what I was saying, and he, you know, was done with the session. So he got up and left. And that was very typical of us, though, you know, like we didn't see that, we weren't on the same page on a lot of things, you know. And even though we were trying to work through it with the therapist, it was triggering for him in some way, and he left, and that's okay. But yeah, so that was the first, we had gone to marriage counseling for several months. And then I continued to see that therapist on my own for a long time, many years actually. And he's kind of the one who helped me kind of uncover some things from my childhood and just like really understand why I was coping the way I was coping, why sobriety felt so far out of reach for me, and just, kind of made sense of a lot for me, And so for me, therapy has been, really a godsend because it's crazy how just talking to somebody and explaining and how you feel and opening up about stuff can just like lift this whole weight off of you. And I felt that every time I went, and I continue to go. So I go to therapy once a month-ish. And I find I recently started getting into some EMDR.
Okay.
Because EMDR therapy, because I was still kind of having some triggering moments come up for me from some bad decisions I made while drinking. And so just, working through those, and it's been super valuable for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If there was one thing that you could tell younger you that's going through all of this whirlwind of life events now, what would that thing be?
That's such a big question. I have so much. I think the number one thing I would say is to love your family. Because when I was in those teen years, I was really a mean teenager to my family, to my parents. And, they're my biggest supporters. I think back on that. I'm like, why the heck would I be so mean to my mom? I call my mom all the time. Like if my daughter starts acting a certain way or has a little attitude, I'm like, I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I act like that. Oh, and she says, she always says, it's payback. But, that's the biggest thing, because my parents are my best friends and they have been my support system for so many things. And I was kind of a little, I don't want to say it, but I was a little bitch,
Speak freely.
I was a little bitch to my parents. So yeah, that would probably be the thing that stands out for me the most.
Mm-hmm. And then going forward in the future, what are things that you're hoping to accomplish, given everything that you've been through and where you're at now?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm in a really good place, mentally, spiritually, and as far as like my career goes, I just recently held my first ever retreat for aspiring authors and speakers, which was fantastic. And I just holding space for women to know that their voice and their stories matter was so pivotal for me. Like I had always wanted to do it. And then a friend of mine who's also an author asked me to team up with her, and we did it together. And I was just so blown away by how our experiences can help so many people, And so I want to do more of that. I want to do more work aligning, just showing women how to step into their voice, whether they want to be a speaker or they want to be an author, but just showing them kind of how we did it and how we continue to do it. And I have a lot of speaking engagements already booked for 2026. So doing that in addition to my full-time job is a lot. I'm also a volleyball coach, so.
Oh yeah, you're doing a lot.
I know, I really am. It's just kind of crazy. But my daughter plays volleyball, so I'm helping coach her team, which is a club volleyball team. So that goes till May. So I'm pretty crazy, I know. But I, these are all things I'm very passionate about. So it doesn't feel like work for me. And I feel blessed that I get to do these, have these opportunities and do this work and make a living, because that's really cool. I feel like when you can do what you love and help other people at the same time, that's the biggest thing. And I just love hearing the stories from women and the women that I work with when we share our stories and what like our experiences were like, how it makes them not scared to do it so much, And I think you always just need someone else to show you the way, you know? And I feel like that was me with my sobriety. I had a sober sister who helped me. She showed me the way. And, you know, there's always somebody who will support you. And so just trusting the people around you that you love and leaning on them, you know, because we're never meant to do this journey alone. You know, we're meant to lean on the people who love us and care about us. And I'm so grateful for a strong support system.
You made it to the end. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you have a story, though, that you're wanting to get out there and you feel like your life and your testimony could have an impact and really change the lives of hundreds, thousands, millions of people just by them hearing it, I want to give the opportunity to you to be able to be on the show. Down in the description, I'm going to leave a link for a questionnaire for you to fill out in order to get on here and be able to share your story. All you got to do, click it, fill it out. If you just put a couple of words on there, it's going to be hard for me to really see if that story is worth putting on here. So really go into detail when you answer these questions. But this is the opportunity for you to be able to come on the show and showcase your testimony, because I believe testimonies are powerful. I had somebody in here just the other day and they were like, I realized once I was able to own my story, it no longer belonged to me. It belonged to the people who were meant to hear it so that they can be helped from it. And so if that's you and your testimony and your story is meant to help somebody, fill out the link down in the description and let's get you on the show. Thanks for tuning in.